Welcome to the channel. Today we're sharing a cheating story you won't believe. If you enjoy it, please like and subscribe. Let's get started. The wind whipped through the tight streets of Windermere, carrying the rain sideways and soaking my pants. A shaky streetlight danced on a muddy puddle as I trudged down the wet road. A scruffy cat growled at me from some soggy cardboard nearby. This wasn't the nice part of town, it was Sycamore Lane, and midnight was a lousy time to be here. But work is work. Somewhere in the distance, I heard the sad notes of a saxophone drifting through the rain. My notes said to follow the music. I turned my head, trying to figure out where it was coming from. Eventually, I picked a direction and walked deeper into an even bleaker alley. The sax was joined by a bass, drums, guitar, and piano. From what I could hear over the night's usual noise, the band wasn't bad. A flickering blue neon sign led me to a bar at the end of the alley. When I pushed the door open, I stepped into a haze of cigar smoke, stale beer, and raw sadness. The saxophone player took his instrument from his lips and began to sing in a voice that spoke of too many cigarettes, too much bad whiskey, and too much sadness. The raw emotion rode through his music like the freight train that he rode away from the hard times in Nashville or Cleveland. The small crowd sat in rapt silence while he sang, lost in his lament. I grabbed a stool at the bar. "What's your poison?" The woman behind the bar matched the ambience of this place. Her once blonde hair was tinted yellow by the smoke, her once pretty face scarred by age, a hard life, and a lack of sleep. The only thing that seemed to have survived the ravages of time was her figure, or at least the part of it that I was allowed to see. "Whiskey, straight up," I said, slapping a 60 on the bar. "You want change, or are you going to work your way through that?" She asked. "Keep 'em coming. I don't suppose you can tell me where I can find Eliza Grant?" She served me an extra shot of whiskey and passed the glass to me along with my change. "You found her. You must be Nick." I took a business card from my pocket and passed it over. "This card says I am, and it's my card, so I guess I am." I took a swig of the whiskey and wished I hadn't. I hated to think of the damage this was going to do to my guts on the way through. I winced to show my displeasure. "When was this made, yesterday?" "Stick around. The band will be finishing their set in 10 minutes or so, and then the crowd will clear out and we can talk. Why don't you take a load off in that booth over there?" Her nod indicated a booth occupied by a woman who looked as if she too had seen better days. I slid in opposite this stranger and put my glass down. A quivering hand reached out and grabbed it. The glass rattled against her teeth as her unsteady hand tilted it up, emptying it in one gulp. "Help yourself, why don't you?" I said. "I just did. Got a smoke?" I shook a Marlboro out of the pack for her and one for myself. She grabbed it like it was her last and didn't even bother to tap it on the table to tamp the tobacco before she stuffed it between her lipstick-smeared lips. I took the Zippo out of my jacket and lit hers before lighting mine, snapping it shut. "You looking for some action?" "Nah, I gave it up for Lent." We sat in silence, each lost in our own separate worlds. I'm thinking about what Cora Bell wanted from me. And she, well, I couldn't tell what world she inhabited. The band finished their set and put down their instruments. The fact that they weren't packing them away told me that they were coming back soon or that this was their regular gig. One by one, the customers shuffled out as the band moved over to the bar for one last free drink before heading out to wherever. My companion stood shakily to her feet. "You sure you don't want to take me home?" "Sorry, sweetheart, but I've got to get home to the little lady." It was a lie, but she wasn't to know that. In fact, in an hour, she would have forgotten all about me. Cora Bell locked the door and came and sat down in the booth. "I see you hit it off with Lola." She put another glass of whiskey in front of me. "That's to replace the one she took." "You did that on purpose, didn't you?" I held it to my nose. It didn't singe my nose hairs, so I knew it was a different batch to the other stuff, probably last week's. I took a sip and it slid down smoothly. "Nice. Private stock, is it?" "Yeah, I keep this for special clients." "How can I help you?" "I want you to find my no-good husband." I could tell by the tone of her voice that there was no love lost between her and her missing husband. "I gather that you would prefer it if he came up dead?" "You gather right, but that's not to say you should kill him if you find him alive." The no-good son of a bitch was not only stealing money from me, but he was putting it about with just about anyone, and he didn't care if I knew it. "He even screwed your friend that just left." "You're kidding me, right?" "No." I went out into the alleyway out back to toss some trash in the dumpster, and there he was with a 354. I got the picture. "When was the last time you saw him?" "Right after I chucked him out the door Tuesday 2 weeks ago." I had just had a visit from a couple of very big and mean-looking guys who told me they were collecting on behalf of one of the local bookies. It seems he was into them for a few thousand, and these guys suggested that if he didn't pay up and soon, he would regret it. I don't suppose you know the name of this bookie, do you? Ralph something or other. I didn't quite get the last name, if in fact they mentioned it, but I gather he is big time. They don't come much bigger. There's a good chance your husband is currently feeding the sharks at the bottom of the ocean, and I don't mean that he's down there with a copper ball over his head holding out lumps of halite for them either. If he is, can you prove it? Probably not, but I might get lucky. You never know. I don't suppose you filed a missing persons report? I did, but it's probably not much use. They didn't seem terribly interested, especially after I told them that he owed Ralph money. I figure they came to the same conclusion you did. They'll call by tomorrow night to let you know how my investigation is getting on. I got up and walked out into a night of misery. It had come to this. Ethan Cross, my ex-partner, had left to set up his own agency about 4 months ago, taking my ex-wife with him. He was the money man of the Mason Drake Detective Bureau, discretion guaranteed. I was the brown part, and before you come up with a smart-ass remark about the name, let me tell you I've heard them all. I was the poor schmuck who did all the detecting. I drew wages, and he drew what was left. That wasn't the deal when we started out, but after he left, I found out that he had done a damn sight better from the business than I had. I went home and grabbed a couple of hours shut-eye before hitting the pavements. It didn't take long for me to find out that my man had run up a large tab with several bookies and was stalling for time, hoping for the big payout so that he could clear his debts. Like all gambling fools, he had lost sight of the fact that his chances of that big payout were on the same level as a snowball's chance of survival in hell. I got the impression that Ralph had lost patience with him, and I knew what that meant. All I had to do was prove it, so I paid a visit to Ralph. My first hurdle was to get by the goon at the front door of Ralph's office. What I want? He made the Neanderthal man look intelligent. I wish to see your boss, straightforward enough request, I thought. The boss ain't seeing no one, so shove off. I hit him with a hard right to the breadbasket that doubled him over, followed by a swift knee to the face. He stood there with blood streaming from his nose and a bewildered look on his ugly face. He thought about having a slug at me. A minute later, he had a second thought and decided against it. Why don't you be a good fella and go and speak to your boss? All you have to do is tell him that Nick Brown would like a chat. I could hear him muttering my name over and over as he left. After several minutes, he came back. The boss will see you. He looked hurt, but like a good boy, he let me by. I didn't knock. Hi, Ralph, long time no see. I held out my hand for him to shake. He ignored it and nodded towards a chair. What do you want? He made it sound as if I was wasting my time even talking to him, which I probably was. Didn't you used to be brown? He chuckled. I'm still brown. Ask Neanderthal man at the front door. I'm looking for one of your clients who's gone missing. You wouldn't happen to know where Vincent Carter is, would you? Why would I? I don't get involved with petty hustlers like him. I didn't ask if you know him. What I asked was if you know where he is. What makes you think I know where he is? I would hazard a guess that he has met an untimely death and is shark bait. I could be wrong, mind you, but it seems that when anyone owes you as much as he did, they seem to end up that way, or at least there are rumors to that effect. Wise guy, aren't you? Okay, let's just say that I know what happened to him, but I don't know where he is. You should ask your ex-partner about that. Why, what has he got to do with this? He was contracted to carry out the hit, and I won't say who requested it and dispose of the body. I thanked him for his information and left, getting a nasty stare from the gorilla at the door. For fun, I shaped as if to have another shot at him, and he cowered against the wall. Ralph will probably have to look for another goon. My next port of call was at the new Swish modern office of my former partner. His receptionist looked familiar after all. I had been married to her for several years. You look great, doll. Now, can I have a chat with Tony? Her real name was Annie, but ID squeezed it down to doll, and she hated me for that, among other things. The look that she gave me told me that she still couldn't stand my efforts at humor. She flicked a switch on the gizmo on her desk. I'd get one for myself if I had someone to flick the switch, and his voice came through the speaker. Yes, sweetheart, what is it? Nick is here and wants to speak to you. Send him in. I went in and found him sitting at his desk, trying to look as if he was flat out with work. I knew better, and it didn't fool me. What do you want? He said angrily. I don't know why he should be angry with me. I didn't walk out on him and take his wife with me. I didn't take the company's client records with me, thinking that I had all of the business sewn up and not having to live with the fact that the clients remained loyal to me, and when he called on them, they told him to shove his agency up his butt. Nice place you've got here. Must be costing you a fortune, more than you're earning. But even I didn't think that you'd even sink so low as to do Ralph's dirty work for him. What do you mean? I understand that you took Vincent Carter for a ride and fed him to the fishes. Who told you that? I noticed that he didn't deny it. A little canary sang an interesting song. Why are you telling me this? What's in it for you? I figured that I'm due for a big payout. Is this blackmail? No, I've got bigger fish to fry, if you'll pardon the pun. I could have stayed a little longer exchanging witty repartee, but I couldn't be bothered wasting my time. I left him there, puzzling about my next move. I wouldn't keep him in suspense long. I called in to see my friend, Officer Grant, at the precinct house. I copped the usual from the troops as I walked through the squad room. Who's the pretty boy then? Didn't you used to be brown? Now you're no good. Crap like that. I hear it every time I come into the station. Hey Rick, did you ever find Vincent Carter? Rick was staring at a file on his desk, a dead cigar hanging from his lips, and a mug of tepid coffee feeling neglected beside his hand. No, we figured if we ever found him, there would be so little left of him that he'd be just another John Doe with no means of identification. What do you know? Rick would have been good-looking if fate hadn't stepped in. His face bore the scars of a few too many hits from his college boxing days, his bouts with the bottle, and his worries about the fidelity of the woman who calls herself his wife. His wife, and she still was in the legal sense, got tired of waiting for him to stagger home after a day of saving the world from itself and being too tired to perform his conjugal duties, so she took to finding relief elsewhere, the knowledge of which found its way to Harris' attention. He would have divorced her if he could be bothered, and she didn't want a divorce because he brought home a regular paycheck, which was more than could be said for many of her lovers. I don't know where he is, but I do know who took him there and probably rubbed him out as well. I think you should go take a look in Tony's Chevy. If you look around in the trunk, you might find some blood which will probably match Dave's blood type. What makes you think your old partner had anything to do with this? Business hasn't been all that good for him lately, and he needs money badly enough to do this job for Ralph. If you can finger him for it, you might get Ralph as well. So lean on him a little, and he'll squeal like a stuck pig. Sure thing. I knew that Rick had been trying to pin some sort of rap on Ralph for a long time, but every time he thought he had him, Ralph showed up with his lawyer and a whole bunch of people who were prepared to swear on a stack of Bibles that Ben the upright citizen was somewhere else at the time the crime was committed. I walked the 5 blocks from the station house to my office, pausing just long enough to grab a cup of what the street vendor laughingly described as coffee and a paper from the newsstand. I glanced at the headlines, but nothing grabbed my attention, so I folded it and stuffed it under my arm. There would be plenty of time to read it in detail back at the office. I was good at what happened next. I opened the door, and as I walked into the front office, I took off my hat and threw it in the general direction of the hat stand. As usual, it stuck, but as I took off my coat, I found myself grabbed from behind. That's not usual. A voice came from the stuffed chair I had thoughtfully provided back in the days when I had a partner and a wife in reception for clients to rest comfortably while they waited for me to attend to them. Very well done, a man of some skill. Bruno, you may release Mr. Brown. As I was released, I turned to face the man who had held me. Bruno, the Neanderthal, was called Bruno. The irony of this revelation took me by surprise to the point that I almost missed the telegraph message that came just before the punch was thrown. Like I said, I almost missed it. Unfortunately for the ponderous Bruno, I hit him low down in the body, and as he lurched forward, I chopped him with a looping left to the jaw. He went down like a poleaxe steer, and I filed away in my memory that Bruno had a glass jaw. What do you want, Ralph? A word to the wise, Mr. Brown, a word to the wise. After our little meeting this morning, I couldn't help but ask, why would you be interested in the whereabouts of a loser such as Vincent Carter? Could it be that his wife, the beautiful Cora Bell, had hired you to find him? Or could it be that she hired you to confirm that he was no longer among us, having retired to that track in the sky where every horse is a winner? Or could there be another, very dangerous for me, reason? I told myself that I should call by just to reassure myself that you were no threat to my operations. Reassure me, Mr. Brown. This was a whole different Ralph to the surly bookie that I confronted earlier this morning. He was positively loquacious. He was positively polite, and he was positively scared. I hated it when people who could harm me were polite. It usually meant that I was in danger of being harmed. A smack in the head, I could understand. That was the language of the streets where I lived. But this was alien, and I had this premonition that I was going to be harmed, and soon, if I made a wrong move. If you must know, I have been hired to find him, dead or alive. So be it. I must, however, warn you that if ever I should hear that you are encroaching on my territory, my vengeance will be swift and total. Do I make myself clear? Sure. I won't even ask if it was you or one of the other several bookies that Dave owed money to who had him stiffed. I'm glad that you didn't ask. You have saved me the bother of lying to you. He stood. It was the first time I had ever seen him erect, and for a big man he was surprisingly short, no more than 5 feet tall. My attention was on Ralph as he walked to the door, and it wasn't until I heard the slight noise behind me that I realized the danger I was in. The lights went out, and I didn't hear Ralph tell Bruno that he shouldn't have done that. Sorry, boss, but I thought you wanted him roughed up. That thought was about 5 minutes too late. In the future, you don't hit someone unless I tell you to. I can't have you thinking for yourself. I don't know whether I was awake or not, but there was a ringing in my ears. As consciousness returned, I realized that it was the telephone making a racket on the desk. I crawled over and grabbed the cord. The phone came off the desk and must have hit me on the head because when I woke up again, I thought I was dead and gone to heaven. My head was resting in a beautiful and soft lap, and my brow was being wiped by a soft, damp cloth held in a beautiful hand. An angelic voice wafted down from above. Are you all right? I can't hear any harp music, but I must be in heaven. It was the best that I could think of at the time. What happened to you? I came past your door and found you laying there on the floor. Are there any truck tire marks on the carpet left by the 18-wheeler that ran me down? You must be feeling better. Your sense of humor has returned. I never lost it. In this business, if you take life too seriously, it will grind you into an early grave. Do you think you can stand up? You'll need some assistance. She was a tall, slender blonde, and all of her bumps were in the right place. She smelled really nice, unlike the cheap dime store scent used by the women that I usually met. She was also strong, and I found myself almost being lifted bodily by this angel. Of course, I had to stagger a little as I got to my feet, and of course, she had to hold me more firmly. I was in heaven. She led me to the chair recently occupied by Ralph. I sat down gratefully, and she walked away from me, out of my door, and out of my life. I was in the middle of feeling sorry for myself when she walked back through the door and back into my life. The angel of mercy had returned with 2 paper cups of coffee. She walked past me into my office to return a moment later with the flask that I kept in my top drawer for special occasions. Take a sip. Yes, ma'am. I obeyed, and she topped my cup up with whiskey from the flask. I decided I liked this person more and more. She put the flask on the reception desk and sat on the arm of my chair. Wow, that's a huge lump you have on your head. It's no wonder you thought you'd been hit by a truck. Who did this to you? It was a truck called Bruno. Bruno? Now that has really smashed my preconceptions. All of the Brunos that I have met have had difficulty holding their hands straight because they have had no real strength in their wrists. This particular Bruno is around 6'4", 260 pounds, and an intelligence that wouldn't bother the scorer at an IQ test. Now the important question, who are you, and what were you doing walking past my door? My name is Riley Collins. My mother, Eliza Grant, hired you to find my father. I was actually looking for you, and the reason I walked past your door was because it was open, and I didn't see the sign on it the first time. It was only when I came back that I saw you on the floor, and when I came in I saw the sign. You could at least have it rewritten instead of just taping some paper over the other name on it. I must admit to some confusion here. Cora Bell didn't look old enough to have a daughter Leah's age, although the lighting when I met her could have confused me, and Leah looked far too old to be Laura's daughter unless she was the result of the Bible Belt breeding cycle. What do you know about your father's disappearance? I knew that he had financial problems. There was nothing particularly new in that. Ever since I went to college, he would ring me asking for money. Mom wouldn't give him any more, so he figured he could tap me for some of the allowance that Mom gave me. If I could, I would help, but a couple of weeks ago I couldn't, and he sounded really desperate. He begged me to see if I could get an advance on my allowance, but I couldn't do that because my next allowance was already committed to books and tuition. So you told him no? He sounded as if he was crying over the phone. I couldn't tell if he was genuine or it was just an act, but I was really tired of him ringing me, begging for money. So I got my roommate to answer it for me and tell him I wasn't there, so he couldn't do it anymore. The last time I spoke to Mom, I asked for an advance. She wasn't happy when I told her why. I couldn't lie to her because she was always able to see through my attempts at lying to her, so I gave up. You're close to your mother, Aren't you? Yes. We are very much alike, and I admire her for what she has achieved with her life. She has really had to struggle, you know. She was married young, and I believe that it was because of me that she married, unless, of course, I was 3 months premature. No, she didn't tell me that, but I came across her marriage certificate among some papers I was looking through, and I can do basic math. She worked hard to make ends meet because my father was always broke. He didn't work much, he couldn't keep a job for long, so he began gambling to try to make money, but more often than not, he lost it. Mom got a job working in the bar, and she ended up running the business and doing it so well that when the owner retired, he sold it to her for a very reasonable price. Pop accused Mom of having an affair with him, but I knew that couldn't be true. Mom wasn't like that. Did your father work there too? If what he did could be called work. He used to strut around behind the bar, serving drinks, but he probably gave more away than he sold, especially to the women. At nights, when Mom needed him most, he would disappear for hours at a time. Mom eventually caught him having sex with one of the regulars out back in the alley, so she threw him out. Which just about brings us up to now. Yes. Do you think that you can find him? It looks highly unlikely that I will ever find him alive. The person who dealt the cowardly blow to the back of my head is a goon who works for one of the bookies your father owed money to, and Ralph, that's the bookie, all but admitted that he was behind your father's disappearance. If that's the case, well, let's put it this way, when Ralph makes people disappear, they stay disappeared. Are you satisfied that Ralph had my father killed? Why do you ask? What if he is taking credit for the hit just to bolster his reputation? Well, then I sure as hell wouldn't want to tell him he's lying. Can you think of anyone else who wanted him dead? The line forms on the right, babe. You can take your pick. If I didn't know better, I should even include your mother. She wouldn't lose too much sleep if he turned up dead. Where do we go from here? What do you mean we, white girl? I want to help. I want to be there when the answer is found, whatever that is. Could get nasty. We're not dealing with the organizers of a Sunday school picnic here. I'm a big girl. They'll take my chances. Speaking of big, just how old are you? I'm 26. You'll be 24 next month. How old is Cora Bell? I wouldn't have put her much past 45. Good guess. She has only just turned 45, although I wouldn't mention that to her. She's a little sensitive about that milestone. What do you like in your coffee? When I said help, I meant the real thing, not just running errands. Okay, you stay here and I'll get the coffee. How do you like yours? Black, strong, with 3 sugars. Actually, if you get it from the delicatessen downstairs, just tell them it's for me. They know how I like it. When she returned, it had taken longer than I thought it would. She had this strange look on her face. I've been having an interesting conversation with the people downstairs. You've had a hard time of it of late, haven't you? You can't believe everything that you're told, especially not from those gossip mongers. Your partner left and took your wife with him. That must have hurt. Yeah, it did. Now can we drop the subject? All right, consider it dropped. Now what do we do? Are we out to rough someone up to get him to talk? You've been reading too many dime store novels for your own good. It doesn't work that way. It's usually just a lot of boring foot-slogging. Okay then, let's go. Yeah, boss. Right, boss. Anything you say, boss. Just how high would you like me to jump, boss? Sorry, that's what comes from being my mother's daughter. I took my coffee and walked into my office and sat down. By the time Leah had thought about it and followed me in, I had taken a notepad from my top drawer and was making a list. What's that? Leah asked, pointing to the list. My grocery shopping for the week. No, it's a list of what I know, what I suspect, and what I need to confirm before I venture forth. Oh, what do you know for sure? Wednesday 10 days ago, your mother caught your father in a compromising position with the beautiful Lola and decided that Shed had enough of him. So she threw him out. This was just after she had a visit from a couple of Ralph's thugs demanding money with menaces. Since then, nothing has been known of his whereabouts or whether he is, in fact, still with us. I know that he is in all probability dead, and if that is the case, I know who it was that would have carried out the dastardly deed. What I don't know is where the body is, if there is one. Who ordered the hit, although our friend Ralph is the prime suspect for that, and just how he met his untimely demise. What I need to confirm is the identity of the person who ordered the hit, where the body is if there is one. If not, where the elusive Dave is now. Could be that he is lying low with one of his lady friends. In fact, that would be a good place to start a trip to see Cora Bell for some directions, I think. I locked the door behind us, and we walked down the stairs. Why don't we use the elevator? This way is quicker. Once on the pavement, I began looking for a cab. One thing that is certain in this world is that when you need a cab to get somewhere, there is never one around. And by the time I saw one cruising towards us, it would have been a waste of time hailing it. We were that close to our destination. Don't you have a vehicle of your own? No, they're too much trouble in this part of town. You can never find a park when you need one, and even if you do, you would be very lucky to find your wheels still on it when you returned. The bar was open, so we went inside. There was a layer of smoke drifting through the room. It hadn't quite filled the space between floor and ceiling. Give it time. What are you doing here? I was just about to come up with some sort of witty retort when I realized that the question was directed at Leah. Why aren't you at college? I had to come and see what was happening. Pop hadn't called asking for money in over a week, and then you tell me that he is missing, but you didn't seem concerned about him. I found out that Jerry was helping out, so I wanted to see if I could help in any way. It was just as well. I found him unconscious on his floor. Someone had taken a dislike to him. I'm not paying good money for your tuition to have you drop out of college. Don't worry. I'm up to date with my assignments so I can take some time off. What have you found out? My turn to speak. I can safely say that Ralph knows more about this than he cares to admit. If he is responsible, I know that my former partner is somehow involved, and I can't wait to pin something on him. Apart from that, I can't prove anything at this stage, so I just keep looking. I don't suppose you know the address or where I can find his friend. Do you? There's a rooming house just around the corner that she uses during the day. They rent rooms by the hour, but she has a long-term deal, probably involving favors to the caretaker, so she stays there full-time. I wasn't looking forward to this, but I went anyway. There was an alleged man who answered my knock on the door marked caretaker in the foyer. Go easy on the door, will you? I'm looking for Lola. Aren't they all? Room 6, upstairs. I wasn't depressed when I got here, but I was by the time I reached her door. I hesitated for a couple of minutes before knocking. I could hear a shuffling noise from the other side. It was getting closer. There must have been at least 4 locks on the door, and eventually it opened a couple of inches. What do you want? I want to ask you a few questions. Can I come in? The door opened up fully in answer to my request, and I followed her into her room. There was a double bed against the wall, and it looked as if the bed linen hadn't had the benefit of soap and water for some time. Over by the window there was a table and 2 chairs. On the table was a pile of dirty dishes, several glasses with the remains of drinks in the bottom, an ashtray overflowing with ash and cigarette butts. To complete the picture, the room had a smell about it that turned my stomach. How anyone could contemplate any involvement with this person in this place was beyond me, and believe me, I had seen some pretty disgusting places in my time. You know Vincent Carter, don't you? Who? Vincent Carter, from the bar around the corner where you were drinking last night. I don't remember last night. You got caught by his wife screwing in the back alley a couple of weeks ago. I would have screwed dozens of men since then. You don't expect me to remember that far back? If you do happen to see him or remember anything about him or where he is at, let Cora Bell know at the bar. She can get a message to me. I was going to give her my business card, but decided that it would be a waste of time. She'd probably lose it. Besides which, the nearest payphone was further away than the bar. I walked back to the bar. I was almost going to go back to the office but figured that this would upset Leah, and it would be good to have assistance with this investigation. Mother and daughter had overcome the tension of their meeting and were both working behind the bar. I had hardly slid onto the stool when they both descended on me. Cora Bell paused just long enough to pour both of us a double from the bottle of good stuff under the bar. She slid mine across to me. Where's mine? Leah asked. You're too young to drink. I've drunk before in this place. You will not be served a drink until you're 21. Do you think I want to lose my license? Leah, how did you know that I was looking for your father? I went to the police and spoke with Officer Grant, and he told me that you had been in asking questions this morning, and he told me where your office was. By the way, he said to tell you that your ex-partner isn't happy with you after they impounded his car. Boo-hoo to him. I'm not about to lose sleep over him. There was a meet at the local track today, so I thought that I could kill several birds with one stone by attending. I also thought that it would do my reputation no harm at all to be seen with a gorgeous young thing called Leah. So I invited her along. Where are we going and what are we going to do? We're going to the track where all of the self-respecting bookies hang out. We will wind our way to the mounting yard where they congregate to check out the horses before the off. The track was crowded for a midweek meeting, and we had to force our way through the punters to get to the mounting yard. We stopped just inside the entrance, and I pointed out the bookies to her. That guy in the dark pinstripe and the snappy hat is Four-Finger Freddy. He had a disagreement with a pair of bolt cutters wielded by a goon working for the man over there in the camel hair overcoat. One Mick the Greek. Over there, hiding behind my new best friend Bruno, is Ralph. Don't let his size fool you. He is one mean son of a bitch. It doesn't pay to cross him. Just ask your father if we ever find him alive. Ralph was deep in conversation with his trainer. He's probably discussing whether to pull his horse to get better odds next time up or let it run on its merits today. Are you trying to tell me that the races are fixed? You got it, and that is why the mug punters don't win. They don't stand a chance. But isn't that cheating? It's called tilting the odds in your favor. Now there's someone we should have a chat with, I said, pointing to a well-dressed woman casting a knowing eye over the runners. That lady is Sophie Lauren. She can spot a horse whose performance has been chemically enhanced one way or the other. I wouldn't go as far as to suggest that her husband educated her in the finer points of equine pharmacology, but what she doesn't know about doping isn't worth knowing. I think a chat is called for. I led the way to where Sophie was watching the last-minute preparations. Hiya, Sophie. Which horse should I stay right away from? Nick Brown, long time no see. I thought that you were smarter than to hang around the track. It's a sucker's game. I know. Don't worry. I'm not here to lose what little money I have on the roulette wheel of equine endeavor. I just thought that I should come over and pass the time with the most important person here. Get to the point, Nick. What do you want from me? You keep your ear to the ground. I'm looking for Vincent Carter, who, it appears, owes several of our bookmaking fraternity large sums of money. I'm tossing up whether he has gone to ground somewhere or he's currently shark bait. Have you heard anything? Sorry, lover. I can't help you. If I was him and in his position, I would have been long gone. Spain has a certain attraction for those who don't want to be found. Just a suggestion, but you never heard it from me. I hope the connections of Black Prince have paid the stewards to test yesterday's sample because any taken after he wins will show positive. And you never heard that from me either. See you, Nick. She gave me a peck on the cheek and walked off. You seem very friendly with her. Leah was watching Sophie's back, looking for a place to put the knife. You're not jealous, are you? We've known each other less than a day. I'm not jealous. I'm just making sure that you keep your mind on the job. Now are we going to place a bet on Black Prince? If I want to eat tonight, I guess that ID better. So we joined the queue, just making it in time before the off to get my fortune on Black Prince to win. We walked outside and made our way to the finish line. My money finished a good 10 lengths in front of the next horse. Where are you taking me tonight? Leah was hanging off my arm as if I was a famous actor. I hadn't even counted the notes before I shoved them into my pocket. As we left the track, I checked to make sure that my pocket had remained unpicked and headed for the office, stopping for coffee at the downstairs delicatessen. Good to see that you're not mortally injured, Mr. Brown. Maury Schwartz, the owner, greeted me as we entered. I was certain that you would have been in hospital for some time when this beautiful young lady told us that you had been badly assaulted. I guess I've just got a hard head, Maury. Comes in handy in my line of work. Leah was looking over the pastries in the display counter. She is a very beautiful girl. No? She is also very much too young for me to even think about. Mr. Brown, you should never stop thinking about such things. Touching is another matter. Please, may I have a couple of these pastries? Leah was pointing at some pastries that would send my blood sugar levels through the roof. Certainly, my dear. Are they just for you, or do you want enough for Mr. Brown as well? Sufficient for both of us, then, for it should be. He picked 4 from the display and placed them in a bag. I noticed that Leah made no attempt to pay him, so I had to peel off some more money from my winnings. When are we going to Spain? Leah was sitting on my desk, her stocking-clad legs dangerously close to my hands, fingering cream from the side of her mouth and sucking it off her finger. The way that she sucked her finger had me disturbed. This was not something taught in the best schools. Who said we were going to Spain? I thought that the lady at the track, who you forgot to introduce me to, by the way, as much as told you that that was where Dad was hiding. She was just saying that if he was smart, and someone who owes bookies as much as he does hardly qualifies as smart, that would be where he could possibly be hiding. It was a long way from telling me that he was definitely there. But you will try to find him, won't you? Look, Leah, Spain is a big place full of people who don't speak English and call us gringos. What makes you think that they would help us find him? We could start by going to the racetracks to see if he was there. Possibly, but I think that we should explore all lines of inquiry here before we think of traipsing off to sunny Spain. Now, next item on the agenda, if I am to take you to some ritzy restaurant for dinner, you may need to change and possibly freshen up a little. I have my pride, and I don't want to be seen squiring a young lady, pretty as you are, who has the appearance of just stepping off an express line from LA. So where are you staying? I haven't checked in anywhere yet. So you're not staying with your mother then? Hell no. Much as I like my mother, one of the reasons that I went to an interstate college was to get away from her. She's fine in small doses. Very small doses. I thought that seeing as we're working together, you would put me up at your place. That's out of the question. Aside from the moral issue of having a young girl staying in my apartment, there's the fact that you're my client's daughter. What would she say to that arrangement? She doesn't need to know. What if she asks? I'll tell her that I'm staying at the Y. I'll give Leah this for a pushy broad. She's fun to be with. We went to my apartment, and I waited while she did what she had to do in the bathroom. Then I hit the shower. I was just lathering up the important bits when I heard her come into the bathroom. Sorry, but I forgot something. I could see her take a quick look at me before turning away and leaving the room. One part of me was feeling disturbed again, while another part was hoping that she was impressed with what she saw. I'm gonna have to stop having these thoughts. After her primping, she looked stupendous and out of the league of the bar and grill I was gonna take her to. So I had to change my plans quickly and call a restaurant that owed me a favor and make a reservation. She was no slouch when it came to eating. She reached across the table and took a couple of fries from my plate, stuffing them into her mouth like she was sucking. I'm really going to have to stop having these thoughts. Tell me about your ex-partner. Did he really run off with your wife? Yeah, they apparently had been lovers for some time. While I was out detecting, he was in my wife. They're now getting everything that they deserve. Their business isn't as profitable as they had hoped. Is that why you told Officer Grant that he was mixed up in Dad's disappearance? Partly. It gave me great pleasure thinking about him squirming while the cops tore his car apart. I hope that they found something. Do you speak to your ex? As little as possible. Just enough to make her feel guilty. Let's change the subject. You're in college, right? Yeah. Mother insisted that I should get an education so that I didn't end up working in some sleazy bar like she did. So how is it going? Good. I'm ahead on my course assignments and my grades are good too. I bet that you have lots of friends. No, not really. I spend most of my time studying, so I don't have time for friends. No boyfriends, then? No. I have had the odd one or two, not at the same time, of course. I'm not that sort of girl. What about lovers? You're not going to tell me that you're still a virgin, are you? No, I'm not still a virgin, and you can blame one of my professors for that. He convinced me that I needed extra tuition. Unfortunately for me, he seemed to have forgotten that I wasn't studying reproductive biology. It didn't last long after I caught him with another student. We talked about this and that while we ate our food and drank our wine. It was quite late when we arrived back at my apartment. I gave her my bed and made up the fold-up bunk for myself. I was just drifting off to sleep, having thoughts that I shouldn't have been having, when I heard her come into the room. She slipped into my bed. I know this because there's barely enough room for one and snuggled against me. Are you asleep? So I pretended to be asleep. Then her hand reached around me, and she grabbed me from behind. You've been having naughty thoughts about me, haven't you? What? No, never. I don't have those kinds of thoughts. You're just like every man I've known. Listen to the vastly experienced girl. How many men have you known? I presume you mean in the biblical sense? Thousands. I'm not that kind of girl. The way that she was behaving suggested otherwise. I rolled over to face her. If I thought that she was beautiful fully clothed, she was even more beautiful fully unclothed. I just had to touch her, and I did. We made love, and it was like heaven for me. Can I get some sleep now? She had headed to the bathroom to clean up before returning to drag me out of bed and back to my own bed. Isn't this more comfortable? Yeah, and much more dangerous. I don't feel in any danger, do you? Only of falling in love with you. Are you really falling in love with me? I think so. Is that going to be a problem? No, not to me. Mom might have a problem with that because I think that she fancies you. Please tell me that we're not here because of some sort of rivalry between you and your mother. Today was the first time in I don't know how long that breakfast was anything more than coffee and Marlboros. It was Leah, coffee, and Marlboros, and it put me in a good mood for the day, a heat mood that wasn't about to last. My office door used to be a half-glass door with a sign on it that read Brown Detective Agency on the glass half. It used to have the good covered by a piece of paper. The one failing of half-glass doors is that if the glass is broken, as it is now, One has only to reach through the former glass panel to unlock the door. Once inside, it wasn't hard to access the filing cabinets as long as you have a large crowbar, which someone had, and rifle the files searching for something which someone had done. If they were looking for my file on Vincent Carter, then they were out of luck because what with one thing or another, I hadn't yet begun to write up my notes. Well, that takes care of today's activities. I stood in the mess, trying to decide where to begin. You get the coffee while I make a start, Leah said as she began picking up papers off the floor and stacking them on the desk, ready to be sorted into the proper files. I was glad to get out of there even for a couple of minutes because filing was very low down on my list of priorities. Did you see Mr. Good? Maury asked as he poured the coffee. He stopped by looking for you. He didn't look very happy at all. No, I didn't see him, but he left his calling card. I must catch up with him and soon. I paid for today's coffee as well as last week's. The track winnings have certainly come in handy. My mind was turning over this latest development when my path up the stairs was blocked by, you guessed it, Bruno, and behind him I could make out the diminutive form of Ralph and the struggling form of Leah. Before you decide to be a hero, Mr. Brown, you should cast your eye on Miss Blackwell. I cast and saw a small silver-plated handgun. What do you want, Ralph? I want to be brought up to date with your inquiries. It would appear that you have been somewhat remiss in your report writing. Is that why your tame goon was ransacking my office? Yes, I sent him to check your progress with you, but he found nothing. That's because there was nothing to find. I'm no further on with my investigation than I was the last time we spoke. Now would you be so kind as to unhand the young lady? Very well, but I must warn you again that if you don't appraise me of your findings, I will be forced to harm this lovely thing, or better yet, let Bruno have his way with her. He sounded as if he spent his spare time reading Mr. Webster's dictionary. As I stepped to one side to allow the large Bruno to pass me, he took a swing at me. His telegraph was working much better than his swing, and I was able to avoid colliding with his massive fist. Because he missed me, it threw him off balance, and when I shoved my foot across his path, he fell, tumbling down the stairs and crashing against the wall of the landing, loosening lumps of wall plaster that crashed onto his head, giving him a bad case of dandruff. Most impressive, Mr. Brown. I trust that you will not attempt the same maneuver with me otherwise. My finger might just tighten on this trigger with unfortunate consequences for Miss Blackwell, and you wouldn't want that, would you? And I trust that you will not contemplate harming the future Mrs. Brown, or I might just get a little peeved if you get my drift. I think we understand each other, Mr. Brown. I hope so, and while we are in this cooperative frame of mind, would you pass a message on to my former partner for me? Would you tell him that the next time he even thinks about trashing my office, he'll do more than have the police demolish his car? He'll pass on your message, although he is still angry with you. He shoved the gun into the inside pocket of his snappy coat and walked down the stairs, stepping over the still prone form of Bruno. Come, Bruno. I don't pay you to lie around all day. Bruno grumbled to his feet and ambled after his boss. What do you mean, the future Mrs. Brown? Leah was having a hard time hiding her disgust as she sipped her coffee. I didn't know whether her disgust was for my statement or the coffee. Do you mean to tell me that you're not thrilled at the prospect of life with yours truly? I didn't say that. It's just that this is so sudden. You've given me no time to think about whether I want this or not. How much more time do you need? My patience isn't inexhaustible, you know. I need a couple of days to think this through. Oh, don't worry. It isn't you that I'm worried about. It's your lifestyle and the people that you meet and it appears offend on a regular basis. She came and sat on my desk again with her stocking-clad legs dangerously close to my hand. The filing and detecting can wait. I stopped by the bar to update Cora Bell on my progress, or lack thereof, to keep up appearances. Leah had left the office earlier than I did and was serving behind the bar. Look after things for me, Leah. I need to talk to Nick. Sure thing, Ma. She gave me a wink from behind her mother's back. We went into the storeroom out back that served as her office. Nick, it looks as if Dave isn't coming back anytime soon, so I suppose that your work is finished, and you want your payment. Not so fast. We should wait for the coroner to finish his report before we go off and spend our money. You get your insurance payout, and me, my fee. There's something bothering me. A few things that don't ring true about this whole case. What do you mean? Surely you don't think that he's still alive, do you? Nah, nothing like that. I just have this feeling that all isn't as it seems, but I can't put my finger on it. Whatever, but thank you for what you've done. I appreciate it. By way of showing her appreciation, her hand looped behind my head and drew my face to hers, her lips covering mine. Cora Bell was a better kisser than her daughter. Maybe she had more experience at it. She moved her lips from mine and whispered to me, Leah isn't staying at the Y, is she? Her hand grabbing my crotch prevented me from lying to her. No, she's been staying with me to save money. Is that the only reason? Her grip tightened. No, I managed to tell her in an almost falsetto voice. I should rip these off, but I want if you make me a promise. Which is, that you don't hurt my baby girl. Ever. I hate to tell you this, but she hasn't been a baby for a long time. Her grip tightened even more, and if I didn't give her the answer she wanted and soon, I would be no use to any woman. Okay, I promise. The relief was amazing. This was one tough lady. Come on, lover, we'd better be getting back to the bar, or she'll be thinking that you've been screwing me. Not that the prospect doesn't hold some attraction. This woman was making it obvious that her interest in me wasn't purely commercial, and I supposed that I could do worse. Much later, I was sitting on my bed when Leah emerged from the bathroom. Her surprise was a see-through negligee that left nothing to the imagination. While I appreciated the vision, this wasn't to be the evening that I'd anticipated. It should have been a night of carnal bliss, but she had become somewhat subdued. In bed, she seemed almost reluctant to let me make love to her, although she did let herself go late in the process. What's bothering you? You haven't been yourself all evening. Oh, darling, I have to go back to college soon. Too soon. Tomorrow, in fact. I spoke to my professor while you and Mother were out back talking last night. The way that she emphasized the word talking meant that she was sure that we were doing more than that. And he told me that if I don't return very soon, it'll be too far behind in my coursework. Well, if you have to go, you have to go. I won't stop you, even though it will leave a huge hole in my heart. If I was an actor, I would have shed a couple of tears about now just to make her feel bad about walking out on me. But he'll be back at the end of the semester, and we can take up where we left off. That is, if you want that. I held her face in my hands and whispered to her, I want nothing more than that. It was with sadness that we blew kisses to each other over the ever-widening gap between us as the express line pulled away from the bus station. Through the sadness, that uneasy feeling returned, and I had work to do. Calloway was putting the finishing touches to his report to the coroner when I emerged from the gauntlet of wisecracks from the cops. Hi, Rick. How is the case going? Just about got it wrapped up. We got your friend Bruno for playing bongos on Tony's skull, and Ralph was sitting there watching and pleading with your ex to stop screaming. Heck, pleading innocence, of course. He claims that he accompanied Bruno on a visit to his cousin, who he would have us believe was your former partner, one Ethan Cross. It would seem that Tony was not in a talking mood and tried to push Bruno out of his apartment. Bruno was showing his affection when we rolled up. When we told Ralph that Bruno doesn't have a cousin, let alone one living in the same apartment building as Tony, he was astonished that Bruno, who he had come to trust totally, should have lied to him. Anyway, his lawyer posted bail for the both of them while they tried to arrange the usual alibi. Tony's in hospital and will be for some time. We were, sadly, a little tardy in coming to the rescue, and we feel awful about that. By the way, where's your new assistant? She had to go back to college. I think I might drive down on the weekend to visit her. You sound as if you've fallen for her. You could say that. I wasn't about to tell him or anyone else that the visit was more than me missing Leah. It was my gut telling me that I needed to see her, but I couldn't explain why. I went back to my office via the track. Tell me, Sophie, the other day you told me that if I was in Dave's position, Spain held a certain attraction. Could it be that instead of him owing the bookies money, the opposite was the case and that they owed him money and suspected that he was doing something not entirely legal? You're not just a dumb Seamus, are you, Nick? The word is that he has devised a system to beat the odds and has become too successful for his own good, not to mention for their financial livelihood. So there seems to be some sort of contest to see who gets to him first. It would seem as if Ralph has won. I didn't mention to her that I had a feeling that all wasn't as it seemed. A bleary-eyed brunette leaned against the dorm room door. Who are you and what do you want? My name is Nick, and I've come to talk to Riley Collins. Is she here? You're about 2 months too late. She dropped out of college around then and moved out. If I was the dumb Seamus that people expected, this should have been my first shock. Along with finding that Leah had lied about having to return to college to catch up on her coursework, then to find that she had dropped out of college some weeks ago, and that she was no longer living in the dorm. Her former roommate told me where she was living now, and that led me to the crashing sound of the next piece of the puzzle falling into place. I was sitting in a cab that was parked in a leafy suburban street opposite one of those picture postcard cottages you see in real estate brochures when she walked out of the front door and turned into the arms of a man. Her kiss was that of a lover, and the position of her hand at the front of his trousers confirmed that it was in no way platonic. She left carrying a small holdall, and the door closed behind her. I caught a brief glimpse of the man, and the puzzle was now complete. So I told the cabbie to wait and walked up to the door and leaned on the bell push. The door opened a crack, and I shoved my foot in the crack. "Hi, Dave. You're looking very sprightly for a dead man. Who are you and what do you want?" "I'm Nick Brown, the poor schmuck that your wife hired to find you dead or alive. She didn't much care which. I guess that I found you. What do you want?" "You already asked that. What I want are some answers. Like, whose idea was it for Leah to latch on to me to make sure that I looked in the right places for clues and made sure that I didn't get too close? Was it yours?" "No, it was Leah's." "What is she to you? And don't try to tell me that she's just your daughter. The kiss and parting I witnessed just now tell me otherwise." "You're right. She isn't just my daughter. In fact, she isn't my daughter at all. I'm just someone who Cora Bell married to legitimize Leah's birth. It was an inconvenient marriage of convenience, and there was never any love between us. She seemed to have been upset that you were spreading it around. I think I just embarrassed her because it looked like she couldn't hold her man." "Then why did you do it?" "It was all part of the plan." "What plan?" "I guess that I'd better explain everything. Leah has used her math skills and turned it to betting on the horses, and before you say that it's a mug's game that no one can win, she has turned it into the science of probability theory. It involves calculating odds and working out which horses will make a reasonable payout, whether it's a win or show result. Sometimes the odds are such that we don't bet on a race, while at other times we will back more than one horse. Does this theory take into account that horses are sometimes pulled or that their performance is chemically altered?" "Sure. We study the form and the track work figures. If we see that a horse has run better in track work than recent race results would indicate, we reason that it's being held back to win big in a big race. And if the odds on a horse are better than indicated by training track performance, and there is money on it at the track, then we know that its race performance will be boosted." My mind went back to the day at the track with Leah and how she seemed to know so little about what went on. "Then tell me, why did you have to go through this whole charade about you going missing and the convenient discovery of your body? I couldn't just disappear. For this to work, I had to turn up dead." "Whose body was it, by the way?" "Some bum from Skid Row who got beaten to death for stealing a bottle of hooch from another bum. When the bum and his friends had finished with him, he was perfect for what we needed. So we wrapped him up and dumped him in Ralph's old warehouse. We then contacted your former partner and told him that Ralph wanted him to pick it up and dispose of it in the river. We had asked around and knew that he would be so desperate for money that he wouldn't ask any questions. And then we spread the word so that Ralph would hear that I had been disposed of and by whom. Leah suggested to Cora Bell that she should hire you to look for me. I take it she hoped that I'd fail." "Yes, it was our plan that you'd fail, but in the process of failing, you would make enough noise and point the police in the right direction so that they would find the body. It's just that the body they found wasn't mine. So Leah was right when she told me that she thought that Ralph could have been taking credit for the hit to improve his image because she had already worked that out. Yeah, she's one smart cookie. I would be proud of her if she really was my daughter." "How long have you been lovers?" "Over a year now. I think that she figured it out that I wasn't her real father, and she was feeling sorry for the way that I had to jump to Cora Bell's every whim." "What are you going to do now that you know that I'm still alive?" "Nothing. I suppose that you could say that I'm an old softy at heart, but I see no reason to stir up a can of worms now that everyone seems to have gotten what they deserve, except you maybe. Forget about me. I don't count. You and Leah have managed to beat the system, so I guess you deserve whatever success you make of this. Leah and Cora Bell both benefit from your life assurance policy, so they're winners there. Ralph deserves everything that he gets, hopefully from the cops, while Tony has already gotten his just reward. As for me, I think that I can still come out on top. One word of advice before I leave the two of you to enjoy each other, and that is get out of town. Out of the country would be better, and soon, before Ralph hears that you could be still alive and tries to find you. Officially, you're dead, and believe me, you're better off dead. We were planning to leave soon anyway. We hear that there are races every day in England. Okay, I'm off to break the amended version of what has happened to Cora Bell. Give my love to Leah. I will. I hope that you enjoyed her. I had nothing polite to say to that. I had the answers I was looking for, and all that remained was to pass the message on. The wind blustered through the man-made canyons of the city, driving the morose rain before it, soaking the cuffs of my trousers. The reflection of the sad streetlight struggled out of a muddy puddle in the road. As I trudged this soggy street, the same bedraggled cat hissed at my feet from the soggy pile of cardboard that still littered the sidewalk. This was Birch Alley, not Elm Street, and midnight isn't a good time to be here unless in the distance a trumpet wailed its sorrow into the night. I didn't need the note to tell me to follow that sound. I turned right into an even more depressing laneway, and the trumpet was joined by a bass, drums, guitar, and piano. From what I could hear of the notes that fought their way to my ears through the other night sounds, the band wasn't half bad. A flickering red neon led me to a bar at the very end of the lane. Pushing the door open, I entered a world of smoke, beer smells, and the sounds of despair. The trumpet player laid down his instrument and began to sing in a voice that told of too many cigarettes, too much bad whiskey, and too much sadness. The raw emotion rode through his music like the freight train that he rode away from the hard times in New Orleans or Chicago, and the small crowd sat in rapt silence while he sang. I sat at the bar, and Cora Belle reached under it for a bottle of her special whiskey, poured a generous one for each of us, and came over to me. "What news have you got for me?" "I have either good news or bad news. You decide." I couldn't think of a gentle way to break the news to her, so I came straight out with it. "What does it feel like to be a widow?" "You mean..." "That's right, babe. He's very dead. I know who did it, and the police will probably even have enough to convict Ralph over it." "That's great. I know this sounds callous, but I'm not sad that he's dead. He was a worthless scum living, so he can't be any more worthless dead. I had a look at his life assurance policy, and there's a moderate inheritance coming my way, enough to pay off what's owing on this joint, leaving me with a little funny money just for myself. I might even be able to hire someone to look after the joint while I take a vacation." "Well, it seems like a satisfactory result, and I guess I have another satisfied customer." "Are you satisfied?" "I mean, as satisfied as I can be under the circumstances." "Stick around. I would like to pay you tonight." I stuck around. We were in her office. She gave me a roll of notes that was more than I was going to charge her. "Now I'll give you your bonus." She came into my arms and kissed me hard on the lips. I hadn't realized that I needed this sex so bad. Leah was good, but she didn't match the strength and urgency of her mother, and that had me wanting Cora Belle more than I ever imagined. I did her on the desk, laying back and enjoying a post-sex Marlboro. She rested her head on my shoulder and exhaled a cloud of smoke towards the ceiling. "Here I was thinking that I would give you a bonus by letting you screw me, but it was me that got the bonus. We, stud, are gonna have to keep this up until you catch up to me. Like I said, I'm an obedient kind of guy, so I agreed with her that we should keep this going. It was some vacation we had, and Cora Belle tells me that I still haven't caught up. I've closed my old office and opened a new one in the storeroom in back of the bar, and we've got one of those gizmos with switches set up behind the bar that Cora Belle flicks when a client comes in or when she's not busy and just wants to talk sexy to me. Nick's case ended in the smoky shadows of Winmer, but was it justice or just luck? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.